So like and subscribe if you want to. The Lakers acquired Dennis Schroder. They're going to move their 28th pick. We assume Danny Green is in the move because the money matches up. Real quick for OKC, they got a first-round pick for Schroder and an expiring contract. I don't know if they were going to get much else for him, so I think that's a pretty good return. I guess the Bucks were rumored for Schroder as well. Assuming it is Danny Green, then I guess OKC just viewed his expiring contract as better than whatever the Bucks could have gave him, or were willing to give them at least. So now for the Lakers side of things, getting a 27-year-old with your first-round pick when you got LeBron James is probably the best you could possibly do with the 28th pick, because you didn't want to bother drafting somebody and then maybe he's good, maybe he isn't, we'll find out in 2 years. I imagine this takes the DeRozan stuff off the table, and we'll see what they do in free agency and all that. I'll get to the basketball stuff in a second, but one thing I do want to say real quick is this could take the Lakers out of the running for a big free agent next offseason, because you assume they're going to want to extend Schroder. And between LeBron, AD, Schroder, and whoever else might still be on the roster, you might just not have enough money to really do anything next offseason, but maybe they view this as a better use of their money. There are some questions about Kuzma's extension as well. We'll have to see with that one. KCP's got a player option. Bradley as well a player option. I know people were asking on Twitter about, does this mean Rondo is gone? Yeah, probably, to be honest. Anyway, as for the basketball fit, I think the fear is that Schroeder's defense and three-point shooting from last season with OKC is a fluke, and he goes back to what he was with the Hawks. But in OKC, he wasn't the primary guy. He's definitely not going to be the primary guy here. So you imagine that shots can be made for him, and he's not going to be running a million pick and rolls or ISOs a game, and the defense isn't going to be able to just focus all on him. So I think a lot of what we saw in OKC for Schroder could be the same thing in LA. His catch-and-shoot three-point shooting was very good in OKC, 41% on about 3.5 attempts a game. In 2019, his catch-and-shoots were 35% on 3 a game, and 2018 he wasn't as good, 2017 he was better. So even when Schroeder's overall three-point percentages have not been good throughout his career, his catch-and-shoots have always been quietly pretty okay. Or maybe not always, but most of the time. So I think there's reason to believe last year his jump shot was not a fluke. And when defenses are loading up on AD and loading up on LeBron, that he can make open shots. I would say he can attack off of closeouts as well. He's, of course, not a one-dimensional player, so if the ball starts swinging around off of an initial LeBron or AD thing, then if it ends up in Schroeder's hands, he could take it off the dribble, and then he could either keep the drive and kick stuff going, or he can try to finish himself. I mean, he has never been like a huge free throw attempt guy, but he takes more than 0 attempts a game, so that's good. Now, Schroder has not been as good in the playoffs, besides a 6-game stretch in 2017. And I think you could look at that as, one, his shooting fell off the last 2 years in the playoffs. You could also say, while Schroder definitely has skills off the dribble and all that, he is still pretty small, and it can be tough in the playoffs when teams are allowed to be more physical and they're going to focus in on you more to get inside and to draw a lot of contact and that sort of thing. So that can be a fear. I think another fear is that he might hijack the offense sometimes. He definitely made progress with OKC, but his playmaking compared to how much he has the ball throughout his career has probably been a little off, as in a little too much shooting, a little too much holding on to the ball, not enough of getting it to the open guy at the right time. And the worst case scenario could be if AD is getting a couple extra less shots a game because Schroder is in there. You, of course, don't want that. I imagine we are going to see Schroder and AD out there when LeBron is sitting, and you would hope for some Schroder, Davis pick and rolls that can be effective. If defenses are going to switch that, I think Schroder can attack that. And I mean, if they're going to switch it, you get it to AD, but I don't think that's your only option. I think Schroder can beat big guys off the dribble, that sort of thing. Of course, Schroeder's mid-range has been very good for the last 3 seasons, and we'll see how that's incorporated to this Lakers team. I think it's fair to say a lot of those would be on pull-ups in the pick and roll, and that's not going to happen as much with the Lakers. But I think he'll still definitely get his opportunities to run the pick and roll and pull up, and I don't know how many ISOs we're really going to see from Schroder, but I imagine it's going to happen more than never. I think sometimes he's going to hit some really big shots for the Lakers, and then other times he might have like a 2 for 9 sort of game or whatever. If we talk about his defense, he was a lot better for the Thunder this previous year. And maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like I remember him having a defensive reputation early on in his career, but then Atlanta started putting so much on his plate offensively that I feel like he wasn't able to focus on that as much. So then when he went to OKC, he was able to be a bit more of a defender. And so we hope that he keeps that going. I mean, he's not a big guy, but he plays pretty hard. His wingspan is also 6'8", which is pretty nuts for being 6'1", but that helps him out. So I guess where I stand with this Schroder thing is I think I'm optimistic. I think I'm more pro this move than anti this move. But I also think there's some room for concern. Is Schroder going to be okay with probably getting the ball even a little bit less than he did in OKC? Is he going to be okay with sometimes making the simple play to AD or just getting it back to LeBron? Is he going to keep up the shooting? I think there's reason to believe he can. And is he just not going to kill too many possessions with like dribbling and then passing it out and then 6 seconds have been wasted or whatever? I think there's reason to fall on either side. I'm choosing to be a little more optimistic just because of how good he was in OKC this previous year. But again, he wasn't as good in the playoffs. So, I mean, we got to remember that, of course. If I think about the rotation of the team, I mean, we got to see if KCP is going to be back. He's got that player option. Danny Green is in the move, of course. And Bradley was their starter in the regular season, at least. So, depending on how things shuffle out here, Schroder could end up starting. I mean, I think the givens are LeBron, AD, and then big guy next to AD, whoever that is, we'll have to see. But as far as the two wings, I mean, KCP and Bradley are not guarantees to be back. So Schroder could be one of those guys. I mean, obviously we've seen him at his best as a sixth man, but he also made the Thunder really, really good when he was out there with the starters. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Lakers are going to be eating into their cap space for next offseason, assuming they extend Schroder. So then I start thinking about what other assets do they have to improve this team besides mid-levels and biannual exceptions and all that stuff. There's a chance that they end up moving Kuzma, who can maybe still be an asset for somebody. We'll have to see if they want to extend him. Depending on how good Talen Horton-Tucker is this season, he could be a trade asset. I know Lakers fans love him, but you got LeBron, and that's just how it goes sometimes. As far as draft picks, I mean, to be honest, they're actually in a similar situation to the Clippers. The difference is, of course, the Lakers just won the title, so we're not giving them crap for it. That, and there's way less uncertainty about them keeping AD and LeBron for long term. But they can't really move a lot of their picks over the next few years. Now, they will have next year's pick. It's just they have to play out the season first because the Pelicans get it if it finishes in the top 7, which of course it will not, but we have to wait for that. Should also point out potential savviness on OKC's part to give Schroder to the Lakers because they are obviously very invested in how the Clippers perform over the next however many seasons, and helping out the Lakers, well, it helps out OKC. Let's just be honest here. So there's that. Is there anything else to talk about? I mean, this certainly takes DeRozan off the table for the Lakers, I would assume. I don't think you're going to get DeRozan without a pick. So, is DeRozan going to Milwaukee? It's possible. We'll have to see how aggressive the Bucks want to be. There's reason to believe they weren't aggressive enough in getting Schroder. Although it's still fair to think that DeRozan doesn't work on the Bucks. I don't know. They were rumored for him. That's how this stuff goes. Maybe the Bucks will make a Hail Mary offer for Drew Holiday. I don't know. But yeah, good stuff. The Lakers got their guy.